welcome back to Lost in Theaters, the podcast about movies that have slipped through the cracks of pop culture. My name is Rachel, and I'm here with
Ruth. My name is Ruth.
With my sister Ruth. And this is just a thought from last time. Our podcast delved into the horrifying world of cannibalism. So if you hate thinking about that, don't listen to the last podcast. And if you don't like thinking about it either, maybe skip 2 or 3 minutes in this podcast.
It'll be longer than 2 or 3 minutes.
Well, okay, because I said something about Greeks eating people, and I just realized I just had to make sure that there was clarity on that. In 2 myths. Well, actually, not 2 myths. There are. I think it's a thing. I mean, Kronos eats his children.
That's a whole different.
He's a god.
thing.
It's complicated. That's a whole thing.
He's not a god.
Kronos?
He's a titan.
He's a titan. Okay.
Totally different.
Okay, but I mentioned Medea. Medea does not eat anybody, or feed anybody to anybody. That's a whole thing. She's heartbroken.
So
there is a tragedy. It is tragic. You can look into the tale of Medea. She's horribly betrayed by Jason. And, yeah, you think he's such a great guy. And then he just,
Really?
yeah, he's not a great guy.
I never really got that impression. He seemed like a bit of a clueless jerk.
Yeah, well, there you go. The curse of the House of Atreus doesn't begin with Atreus, it begins with Tantalus. Tantalus held a feast for the gods, and he fed them his own children, and you're like, Tantalus, buddy, what? And that's one of the stories. There's another one that is more complicated, but that's one of the stories, and because of that, in the underworld, he's punished by not being able to eat anything. He's like in a pool, and there's the food above him, and it's like delicious, but he can't get to it, and the water just sinks when he tries to drink it. It's a whole thing. And that's Tantalus, and that's where we get the word tantalizing, because he can't eat the things that are tantalizing him.
Because of cannibalism.
Because he was a cannibal, yeah. Contrapasso, folks. The Greeks had a sense of humor. And then,
I don't think that's humor.
and no, the punishment fits the crime. Humor. Okay.
What?
And then actually later, Atreus does the same thing. So Tantalus is like the grandfather of Atreus, and Atreus...
Guys.
But he does it not to the gods. His is a revenge plot against his wife, who had an affair. It was a disaster. I don't know what they were thinking, guys. Yeah. So that's that.
Okay, then.
And we're at 2:35. So we did it, Ruth, within sort of that big area of time I suggested. We're done talking about cannibalism for now.
Yay!
It's grim. Okay.
Alright, what's this one called?
This week's movie
Oh my gosh.
is called Merlin and the War of Dragons. And it came out in 2008.
Is it animated?
No!
Darn.
There are parts that use CGI.
Oh no.
I mean, Ruth, these are the sorts of movies that give me hope for my own film career, you know?
I'm afraid.
If you're like, this is a thing that got made and you can access it on Amazon Prime. Maybe
What?
I, too, could make a movie of this caliber, you know? I would have to learn major... I mean, to be fair, any computer graphic thing takes, learning skills, and so, I'd have to do that first, and who's to say it could be any better than it was in this film, right? But it was not super duper in this film.
Okay.
Additionally, the dialogue was some of the most... This movie was made by someone who discovered... who was really into the myths of King Arthur and stuff, and then also realized that there's historical Britain had fun things happen in it. And then on top of that, they were obsessed with their film inspirations are Star Wars.
What?
And I think Gladiator.
Oh no.
I have a suspicion that Gladiator was also one of their things.
Here we go.
I really want the Corridor Crew people who do the reviewing
Yeah.
of not just CGI. I want their stunt people to have a look at the sword fights in this thing, because, oh my goodness, they are so bad. And the worst part, Ruth, is unlike Poseidon Rex, where you watch it
That was a trip.
and you watch it and you think, what am I doing? Like, this is the wildest film. In this movie, it doesn't, it's the Middle Ages, and it doesn't feel that way. Unless you...
What?
It would be better if someone went in and consolidated clips of the film. That would be funnier than watching the film.
What?
You could cut out a lot of this movie, and it would be hilarious.
You like this or not.
I don't think that's a relevant question.
Oh my gosh. You've been giving really weird recommendations.
I don't think it's irrelevant. I would recommend this film to people who want to understand the levels to which films
have sunk? No,
like, I hesitate to call it a bad film.
Okay.
Because, again, I'm not a filmmaker. We have talked about bad films, I suppose, and given stamps of quality, but the thing is, this movie felt heartfelt, you know? It felt, not heartfelt, but it felt like a passion project.
Yeah.
Okay? Somebody they just had this great idea, and the execution was so rough, but the music, Ruth, good music? The music belonged to the ideal form of this film.
What?
If this movie gets remade into something, the music ought to stay the same.
Okay.
It just had this great nobility music where they're like da na 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 na, you know, as things happen, and then it suited the tone that the film was supposed to have.
Okay.
But the film itself didn't quite reach that level. I know. It's a little grim. And actually, additionally, the coloring, it was supposed to be, I think, an artsy coloring, and they just went mostly gray. Just the gray tones were overpowering.
What?
In this. So it just visually looks like someone put a fancy filter on it. It came out in 2008, okay, which is, I don't know if it's a coincidence, but the Merlin TV show that we referenced last time we did a dragon movie also came out in 2008. And this movie's about Merlin, and that show's about Merlin.
Yeah.
I would suggest the TV show long before I suggested this film to fans of King Arthur generally. But at the same time, if you need, like, because we did Dragonslayer last season, and if you are interested in that, you should check it out. But if you just are having this craving for the Middle Ages movies, I don't think this will satisfy you.
Oh my gosh. What is this?
It's a Middle Ages set movie. Right. Yeah. It's a myth movie, not a myth movie. What's the word I'm looking for, sister?
I do not know.
Fantasy. It's a fantasy movie, right? That's the genre that it technically falls under. However, it doesn't quite grip one all the way. But like I said, if someone were to go through and make a compilation video of the greatest hits of this movie, that video could be a great hit, because there are just moments that are so cringy that you just love them. You know?
Man.
Yes, sister?
This is gonna be rough, isn't it?
It's worth discussing.
Okay.
For example, oh wait, no, we won't go there just yet. Because that's spoilers, Ruth. We can't go into the spoilers. Oh, actually, it's medium spoilers. So should we go to the medium spoilers, or do you think there's minor spoilers that people are still interested in?
No, I think that about covers it.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Who's ratings?
Oh, yeah. So the official rating of the film is PG. And I would agree with that.
Okay.
There might be things. It's you know the saying "show don't tell."
Yes.
You know how sometimes you can tell and still not tell?
Yep.
That's what this movie does. It tells and doesn't tell.
We're in for a ride.
Although sometimes it does show, but nothing that would make the showing above PG, I think. Yeah.
Alrighty.
Alright, medium spoilers. The opening sequence is, there's this really intense, there's wailing and there's horses riding around and there's maybe a dragon, and it's a really like, there's a horse running in a field and then it cuts,
Jennies.
and then it does the storybook introduction.
Yeah.
And it's, it opens the book and they're like, Britain, 420 AD, Rome has withdrawn, and, the Saxons are coming, and there's war and magic, and the Dark Ages has all begun, and there was this wizard named Merlin. Okay, so that's all good, except that all of the pictures in the book are actual, like, medieval and Middle Ages pictures.
Oh, illuminations.
They're like illuminations of nothing particular, usually just people. And, like, at the top when there's like a ribbon of art and the background is blue and you have peasants in the front sort of doing things.
Yes.
That's what the pictures are mostly of.
Okay.
And then after this introduction, the book closes. And it never comes back again, Ruth.
That's it.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. End of book. Begin of movie.
Begin of movie, exactly. And actually, I did look into it, and the Romans did retreat around this time. The historical characters mentioned throughout the book do exist, like, what is his name? I write him down. Vortigern.
Who?
Vortigern was, oh no. I don't think he was an Anglo-Saxon, or maybe he wasn't. He was one of the contenders in England that was vying for the throne. Vortigern, and then there was another guy, and yeah. So the general historical setting of tribes and people vying for the throne of England with historical names thrown in for color. I mean, that was the basis. And that's what makes me think someone had learned about British history, and then was like, oh my goodness, this could happen. And you'd be like, yeah, it could happen. Yeah. And so that doesn't tell you about the plot of the film, though. The general plot of the film has to do with, again, this is the minor spoiler section, folks. Has to do with apprentices, a good apprentice and a bad apprentice vying for power in this setting of Roman
oppression.
Not Roman, post-Roman, recently post-Roman England. Yeah, that's what it is. It's dueling apprentices. Yeah, with
Mickey Mouse and the Wizard.
Yeah, so actually the Dragonslayer, again, if you want reference for this is the end of last season. Dragonslayer was more like that.
Okay.
Where it was the apprentice trying to function in the world without the master. This is more, again, dueling apprentices.
Okay.
Yeah. And on top of that,
heinous things? Come on, sorry.
No, it isn't. When I was watching the one about Poseidon Rex, my thought was, I like watching this movie because the ideas here are really good. And it makes almost like the ideas of the movie almost make it worth in itself, this sort of interesting, I think. And I wanted to say the same thing about this movie.
No.
But the ideas of the movie just don't quite overcome the quality of the film. I know. I know.
Well,
it's unfortunate because it really, I don't know, the idea of competing apprentices and then again the title of the movie is Merlin and the War of Dragons.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. So again, if you want to see the interesting stuff, that it's worth checking out. But additionally, be prepared because it's almost a little bland at times. It's kind of baffling. Actually, but like I said, I I would hate for someone who would enjoy the film to just run screaming from it. So I have to make sure that the good stuff also is apparent.
Sorry.
Medium spoiler section comments, Ruth.
No, I think that's good.
Okay. Well, shall we continue?
I don't know.
What do you think the people want to hear, Ruth?
The people?
The people.
The people?
About this film. Are we missing anything? There are dragons, folks, so stay tuned.
Are they animated dragons?
Oh, yeah. Hardcore.
Are there a lot of them?
Actually, yes. It was a gutsy move, can I just say. One thing I don't appreciate about a lot of movies is how few dragons there are. Oh my gosh. When they advertise dragons, I expect dragons. And even book series. You know, like Eragon, how there was dragons, but there was like the whole thing is that they're not around anymore, and a little part of you is like, aww, I want more dragons.
Yeah.
This movie satisfies that
there are more dragons.
I want so many dragons. I want so many dragons. I want dragons like dogs, you know what I'm saying?
Oh.
With plentifulness. You know, if you were to have a field of dogs romping around.
Like 101 Dalmatians in the book at the end? Where they have like a whole park?
Except it's not quite 100, but maybe more like, 40 dragons.
Oh. I thought you didn't go thousands.
Oh, no,
Dang.
not quite. But it does have a good effect.
Okay, cool.
Okay, major spoiler section. Here we go. Okay, so like I said, it opens with this sort of battle scene and then the book, and then you have local kings are warring with each other, and then the first real scene of like content is that a woman is giving birth, and
what?
There's a woman, she's giving birth.
Yeah.
And she's like, ah!
Why?
Well, just there's this opening scene.
What a way to open.
Okay. Oh no, I feel like it's a classic fairy tale thing. You know, the mother is giving birth to a child, and the child will save the world.
Will it now?
Well, you'll see about this child.
Okay.
So additionally,
yes,
I am suddenly really confused. Oh my
what?
gosh, I just made sense of this movie.
Oh,
there was a
no.
plot point I totally missed. Which just suddenly makes sense.
And other concerning
Oh my
things.
goodness. Okay, so there's a man, and meanwhile, then you go see outside the chamber, and there's like the king and a man in a cloak.
I wish
and
I could say that this was unusual.
Oh, well.
Sorry, keep going.
He's playing with bones. He's like fiddling with these bones on a
bones.
Cloth, you know. And then he's like, "You have to kill the child."
What?
Because
what?
it says that because this child is the child of a demon.
What?
And the demon's child is gonna take over. He's gonna do bad things. And
oh, like Good Omens.
Kind of. And so he's like, you gotta get rid of it. And then this other guy comes out of the shadows, and he's like, no, I want this child. This child has, like, it's the classic, like, potential for good. And I don't think we should assume it's gonna be bad before we can, whatever.
Kill it.
Protect the good guy has protected this king's family for generations, and he wants to train this child.
Okay.
Ultimately they go with not killing the child.
Cool.
Hooray!
Yay, no child murder today.
Yes, it's good. And
Happy
so
day.
he rides off into the night holding this child. 20 years later, appears on the screen. Two young men are sitting at this table with another guy, the master, the good mage, and he asks them what they want to learn, and then one of them is like, I want to learn minds, and then basically the master explains like how to be a mentalist.
What?
You know, where it's like,
what is that?
It's like a modern profession where some people, you can like look at a person and you'll be like, oh, you recently wrote a test and had a barbecue, and it's because they like, they see facial cues and they smell the barbecue. It's like Sherlock Holmes is sort of a mentalist. Like, he knows what you're thinking before
like
you're
Psych.
thinking is. Yeah, exactly. There's actually a TV show called The Mentalist.
Oh.
Often they're attributed as, they're like seen as hoaxes. They're fakers on TV kind of thing. But that's basically, he explains the principles of that thing, and the guy's like, well, that's not magic, and he's like, yeah. And then the other guy,
correct.
And then Merlin, who's the other apprentice, says, hey, I want to learn how to make light. And he says, okay.
What?
And then here's where we find out that the magic in this movie, the spells, I just can't get over how Dragonslayer used just straight up Latin for spells.
Yep.
Okay, that just cracked me up.
I mean, Harry Potter.
Well, that's the thing, is this movie does more of a Harry Potter and, like, edits the Latin. Okay. So, like, the spell for light is Luminarius or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not quite Latin.
Like...
Not just, like, full-on Latin sentences just put in your movie. No, it's more slightly edited. And then, actually, the spell, here's just to give you another vibe of the thing. The spell to bring something back to you, you know, in Harry Potter, it's Accio, right? Mm-hmm. In this movie, it's to me. It's to me.
That's not Latin.
That's not Latin. At all. So that's exciting. So Merlin tries to use the spell, but he has trouble. And then the bad apprentice, I mean, he just looks frowny.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is he a bad apprentice?
Well, he tries and
tries to be bad?
No. Oh no. Yeah, but the other guy does better with the thing. And then
Merlin?
The non-Merlin apprentice does better with the spell. He's obviously more powerful than Merlin.
So Merlin is a bad apprentice.
He's not doing very well.
He's frowny.
He's sad because he can't do the magic.
Aww.
Yeah. Okay, so then here's the next thing. Next scene. The master is reading this magical book. Uh-huh. And then shortly after that, he's asleep in the chair with the book in front of him. Okay? Asleep in the chair, Ruth.
Okay.
Next thing. Outside the window of the house, the two apprentices are chatting.
Okay.
And the one apprentice says, hey, that's the book with all the secrets in it. And Merlin is like, I don't know. And it's basically like, you know the dialogue at the beginning of Genesis where the serpent says, you know, well, he doesn't want you to know everything. And then, you know, Eve is like, well, I think maybe, you know, that's not. And then he's like, well, maybe, you know, if you ate this fruit, you would have the knowledge. And she's like, that's basically what happens here. Okay. Where he convinces Merlin to steal the book. Obviously, now we're going to call him the bad apprentice. Obviously, the bad apprentice knows something about what's going on.
Okay.
And he convinces Merlin to steal the book. And he wants Merlin to read the book and decipher who his parents are.
What?
Apparently.
Merlin, no.
So Merlin goes, because he's, you know, an orphan or whatever, he thinks. And he's like, do you actually know who your parents are? Do you? And so then he gets the book. And then they go off into the woods a short way away. They open the book, and then we get the first glimpse of this. Oh, no, we already saw! The wizards can use Jedi lightning.
What?
That's actually the first wizards in the opening sequence with the dragon bones and stuff. Or not the dragon bones, just the bone reading. And the wizard, the mage is like, I want the child. And the other one's like, kill the child. They have this exchange where one of them shoots lightning at the other one. And then he pushes it away. It's really, that's why I said not Lord of the Rings. Star Wars really, I feel, had a strong influence on this film.
Okay.
So then he opens this book and he says some words to it or something, some spell, and the book, light shoots out of it, and it's the same sort of, it's this really bad CGI light, and his hand is on fire, and Merlin is in pain, and the master shows up, and he's like, oh no, and so he turns off the spell, and then, like, makes sure Merlin's okay. Meanwhile, the bad apprentice has run away, and then, actually, when he's looking at the book, throughout this whole movie, Merlin is going to have these sort of flashes, of maybe the underworld? I don't know. It's red background, dark figures, and it's kind of like a Frodo thing when Frodo touches the ring, or like when Harry has glimpses of the, you know, whatever the Dark Lord is doing. That it's like that, where it's like, and he's like, oh.
See, that sounds bad.
Yeah. So the master catches up with the bad apprentice, and he's like, why'd you do that? And he's like, oh, well, whatever. And because he's hiding, the bad apprentice, we figure out clearly that the bad apprentice is hiding something about his motives. And the master's like, you know, the bad apprentice is like, it's always Merlin first, isn't it? And he's like, I don't know about that. And then they sort of part ways. He gets the book back. It's a whole thing. And then the old wizard, no, the mage, goes to a lake, and he starts talking at the lake. And then a lady, Nimue, comes out of the lake.
No!
And she heals Merlin with her magical ember kiss.
Nimue
By that I mean,
is
like,
the
embers.
downfall of Merlin.
Well, that checks out.
Historically.
Embers come out of her mouth and go into Merlin's mouth.
What?
It's very mysterious.
Okay, now that isn't in the
but
legends.
Then, here's the thing. The way the Nimue magic works is they teleport. And it'll just be
here we go.
They'll be touching, and then the scene will change, but they'll still be touching.
Uh-huh.
So they'll be, like, in another place.
Okay.
Yeah. It's really intense. And,
Portal.
So then...
I challenge you to a game of Portal.
Portal. Then, so when I was watching the film, I was like, so where's the bad apprentice now? Is he, like, he's obviously not great, but there wasn't any, like, where did he go? Like,
yeah.
Okay, so now they're in this cave, and...
Is he a dragon?
Well, Merlin wakes up, and the master's there as well. They're all in this cave, and he's like, welcome to my lair.
Aw, no.
Well, he's not a bad guy. He just has a lair. It's so weird.
Okay.
Why is he not taking anyone here before? I don't understand.
Look, sometimes you have to escape your students.
Okay, it's true, but here's the lair, and then he says, Merlin explains what he saw in his weird flash things, and he's like, you saw your father, and then Merlin's like, I'm no demon's child.
What?
It's an actual dialogue route. And then the master's like, you know, just because this is who your dad is doesn't mean that this is who you have to be. It's really inspiring stuff. And then he's like, yeah, well, it does sort of explain my birthmark.
What?
And on his hand, he has this mysterious, like, you can be seen two ways kind of birthmark. Like, one of them's a tree, and then the other one is, I can't remember what the other one is.
Okay.
Anyway. And so, you know, only he can define his destiny. And then there's this really awkward thing where Nimue and Merlin hold hands. I don't know what that was about. Like, it just sort of...
traditionally... they are romantic partners.
Oh, well, there you go.
It ends really sadly, though.
I'm sure. That was one of the morals of the story, is that the ways of gods are not the ways of men, Merlin. Do not trust them.
Oh, no. What?
Well, that's what his master says all the time, although it doesn't really come to bite him quite so thoroughly in this story.
Okay.
And then Merlin and his master... Oh, no, that's right. Now we catch up with the second apprentice, who is apparently on the run.
Okay.
He's like walking through the countryside by himself, ends up in a cave, randomly finds a dragon egg.
Oh no.
Next scene. Merlin and his master are practice sword fighting. And like I said, someone...
That's a weird cut.
Thank you! Someone needs to examine this sword fighting. It is rough.
Oh no.
It's, you know, like... Well, 1, 2, 1, 2, drop kind of thing.
Whoa.
So then, that happens, and then we see again in the mountains the second apprentice. There's a bunch of people, and they're running from a dragon. And the second apprentice shows up and shoots the dragon with this huge arrow, the most top-heavy arrow I've ever seen in my life. It's massive, like, obsidian arrow.
Yeah.
And he shoots it, and it falls on the ground, and then all the people are like, yay, thank you so much, I appreciate it. And he's like, yeah, what a party. And then he's like, well, as a way of celebration, let's all drink this dragon blood.
Okay.
And then a little child there was, you know, wandering around and walks over to the dragon body, and then the dragon body's eyes open.
Oh, great.
So it's not actually dead. And then the child turns around, and the bad apprentice is like, you must also drink this. And then we cut, and all the people had been like, like in pain, you know? So then the apprentice goes, and he walks up to this sort of standing army in the middle of England somewhere, and they're like, hey... He's like, can I join your army? And they're like, no, what do you have to offer? Again, I don't really know. So you understand, like, why would someone... They were so aggressive towards this person. I don't know why they were so aggressive toward this bad apprentice. And they're like, what do you have to offer? And he's like, just you wait. And then he goes to the top of a mountain, really fast apparently. Cut to the top of a mountain, and then he like goes, says something, I don't know what he says. And he summons dragons from the other side. There's like now like multiples, okay? And the people in the army are like, yeah, this sounds great. They're gonna... Oh, they're horrified as well, of course. So...
What? Wait.
Okay.
This sounds great, and they're horrified as well, of course.
Well, the dragons are scary, but they agree to have him join the army. Also, that sound was really loud. Do you think they heard it? It was like someone was moving a couch.
I think it's just upstairs.
Okay. So anyway, this army that he has joined, they were like, of course you can join our army with your dragons. They're against the king at the beginning of the movie.
Wait, why?
Well, it's because everyone's vying for power because the Romans have left England. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. They're one of the people competing for the throne, the ruling.
Somehow I missed that.
Sorry.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a wild time.
Okay.
So, back when we catch up with that king, and the Bone Reader again is like, you gotta kill this Merlin guy, because he's gonna be the death of all of us.
Bone Reader.
Meanwhile, so they send people off to go find Merlin, and then Merlin and his master are still training somewhere, and this man and woman show up, and they're like, hey, we need to take Merlin, and they're like, sure, whatever. And so they do, and then he's like, hey, why don't you have a weapon? That's the woman who says it. She's like, hey, why don't you have a weapon, Merlin? And then Merlin, this is the thing, he then taps his forehead.
What?
It's in here.
What? My brain.
It's in here, guys. And so he's got...
I mean, sure, man.
That's how he talks about his magic. They're like, oh, show us some magic. And he summons an apple out of thin air.
Okay, cool.
Actually, first he summons a rock and they all laugh at him. And then he summons an apple.
Does he throw the apple at them?
Oh, no, he doesn't.
Darn.
Okay, so here's the next thing, though, Ruth, is then there's a random attack by some Picts. Some random Picts attack them.
Are those the blue people?
Yes, exactly! They have, like, they're normal people.
Not the Avatar blue people.
That's true. These Picts are just humans painted in blue.
Yeah.
Cultural
appropriation.
Oh.
Aliens.
Aliens.
Alien cultural appropriation.
Okay. Anyway,
Okay,
so, yeah, and Merlin uses some sparkles to get rid of them.
Sparkle.
He says something like, impedimenta, but not that. That's Harry Potter. Meanwhile, they take him to Vortigern, who's the king.
What a name.
That's the name of a real person.
I know.
Vortigern. Isn't it beautiful?
Okay.
So
Vortigern.
And then the guy comes and he's like, you gotta kill him. And then Merlin's like, what? And everyone's like, what? And then they hear this rumbling, this really intense rumbling. And then Merlin has one of his flashes and he's like, it's a white dragon. I see a white dragon. And
that is part of the Merlin stories, that he has a vision of a red dragon and a white dragon fighting in a pool.
In the pit. And
Yeah.
they dig under and they find it. Yeah, except this white dragon, then the lady right beside him goes, I see it too, because it's in the distance.
Yeah.
So this dragon shows up, eats somebody. No! Incinerates his master, because his master...
What? No!
His master was not coming, and now he's there. He randomly shows up, gets incinerated. It's a tragedy, and then
What?
Merlin has to use his light spell to get rid of it. And then it turns out the master isn't dead.
Oh, good.
And he's like, okay, you need to go to see Lady Vivian in a lake, and you need to get Excalibur.
Vivi.
Yep. And he's like, don't trust gods. Okay. And
What?
so
Why
then,
does he keep talking about gods?
because these ladies are divine of some sort.
Oh.
So he shows up at the lake, and
Run, Merlin.
oh, and meanwhile the other king is like, yeah, we're gonna do some stuff here and get rid of whatever's happening.
Fantastic.
And Merlin actually says, we should work together rather than trying to kill each other. And then that Vortigern is like, I'm not interested in that. So then
Of course
Merlin goes to the lake and he talks at the lake. and he's like, hey,
Chatty.
help me. And then a lady comes out of the lake, and
I love
she
that you
says,
gave Merlin a damsel in distress voice. Hey, help me.
well then, Lady anyway, Vivian comes out with a sword, and she says, we have to trade. And she says, I want what's in here. Tap, tap, tap. But the thing is, I don't know when this happens.
What do you mean?
Maybe it was just too nuanced, because he ends up taking the sword, okay?
Okay.
But I don't ever know when he was supposed to get the thing in his head. When are you supposed to give it to her? Because that was part of the condition.
Just took it.
Maybe, but he still uses magic, so I don't know. So he still uses magic, but he's leaving, and then he gets some more visions. It turns out the bone guy who was reading the bones at the beginning followed him there, attacks him, and Vivian told Merlin, she was like, there's a lot of rules about this sword, turns out. Rule number 1, it keeps you from being harmed when you hold it. Rule number 2 is that, if you know how that story I came up with about the mirror, about when you look in the mirror, if you're bad, it destroys you, but if it's good, it doesn't destroy you?
Only I know what you are referencing, because this is from, like, literally a decade ago.
No, it's a great story.
Why are you telling me this?
The sword works the same way!
Oh man. So, for our lovely audience, would you like to explain what's going on there?
Oh, I just came up with a story years ago that centered around that very concept.
No, explain the concept.
Oh, yeah, well, the sword, if the bad guy holds it, it destroys people who are not pure of heart.
Okay.
Yeah, and righteous, etc.
It is a holy sword.
Well, no, it's just like a good guy sword. What? And so he does, the bad guy takes the sword from Merlin and holds it and gets incinerated. And so Merlin then picks up the sword and keeps going.
That's rough, buddy.
Vortigern then at one point has to challenge the dragon by himself. I don't know how that happened. It just shows up. There's like 2 guys on a hill and a dragon coming. And then the dragon takes Vortigern away and brings him to the enemy, which the bad apprentice is controlling. And they're like, here's the deal. We'll let you live under one condition. So then Vortigern goes and gets his whole army and sets them up for, like, lines of combat.
Yeah.
And then he says, we have to surrender here, guys. Just lay down your weapons. And then, the whole time, there's been this, like, side character periodically.
Oh, no.
With a bit of a shaved head.
Oh,
and,
okay.
And he,
how do you have a bit of a shaved head?
It's quite shaved. It's mostly, I'm trying to think of, so, like, do you know Jason Statham?
Nope.
Okay. That's his hair for the audience.
Cool.
So, he's like, lay him down, but no, this new guy, he stands up and he's like, no, don't do that. We will prevail today. To give in today is to lose your soul, and we have souls. What? And then Vortigern's like, what are you doing? This is insolence. And then it turns out this guy's Uther, and then Uther stabs...
Uther Pendragon?
Exactly! Except it isn't Pendragon, it's some weird version of the word Pendragon.
They just wanted his name.
Well, it's supposed to be Uther Pendragon.
Oh, okay.
But they don't say Pendragon. They say, like, Penwanim or something weirdly. Maybe it's supposed to sound more Welsh. I don't really know what Welsh... Welsh is hard to pronounce.
Rapidly moving on.
Anyways, so, Uther then leads them in the charge, and then on the other side is the Saxons, and the Saxons are like, hey, send out the berserkers, before they send out their, quote, secret weapon.
Because they just have those?
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, someone studied history and got really excited.
No kidding.
And we're just gonna pull out all the stops. So some of the berserkers traditionally are these people who, like, dress in bearskins if they dress at all and go into war, and they're probably intoxicated and on some sort of narcotic that they developed from plants or whatever, and they were really intense. And the idea with the berserkers is that they couldn't be... They didn't feel pain.
They're so wild
that
they're kind of indestructible.
Yeah, they couldn't really feel pain.
Well, they're not indestructible. They just... You will die.
Yeah, they were crazy. And so they sent out the berserkers. Ruth, there was no visual distinction between the berserkers and the other people. Okay. Like, I could not tell... Actually, throughout this whole movie, I could never tell which side was which when you were looking at a random fight.
Oh, great.
The whole time. They were all just, like, generically medievally dressed people. I think... Maybe some of them had particular helmets, but not knowing the history of the helmets, I did not know who was who.
Yep.
And then they're like, okay, now send in the dragons. And then the Bad Apprentice goes, fly, my children, fly!
What? Well, what do you mean, children?
I don't know! So
that's concerning.
Then they lose the battle, but they run away, and it's a whole thing.
Wait, why did they lose the battle?
No, not them. The Uther loses the battle because the dragons.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they run away. Uther's side runs away. Merlin now wants the mage's secret book. Magic guy. And he knows it's in the cave. So he has to go to the cave.
The cave.
And so the Nimue takes him to the cave. Actually, both the ladies take him to the cave. And in the cave, it's a complicated situation, but like one of them tricks him and the other one doesn't. And he thinks it's the other way around.
Oh no.
Ultimately, he figures out how to read the book. And when reading the book, he realizes that the bad apprentice, has been turning people into dragons using dragon blood.
Oh.
Oh, I forgot to mention.
What?
I don't know how I forgot to mention this. The master has died at this point.
What? You said he lived.
Well, he did live, but then at another point he died. The apprentice killed him. The bad apprentice killed him. I know. The bad apprentice killed him because he wanted the book. And Merlin saves the master in this. He has a vision of it happening, so he gets there, but he gets there just a bit too late.
No.
It's sad, and he has to die, and it's tragic. And then he goes off, and what's the word I'm looking for, Ruth? That's why he goes looking for the book in the cave.
Okay.
Because he needs it before the other guy gets it.
Okay.
He figured out what was happening. Meanwhile, Uther's people are suffering, and then of course, Merlin shows up just in time at the end, and he says, I have a plan. Who's your fastest rider? And then they all look at the girl. Of course she's the fastest rider. And then...
What girl?
There's the girl who just was around.
Okay.
She's like, these periodically shots of her head with like the wind blowing in her hair.
Cool.
The one female in the troop. And then she rides along the same mountain pathway that we've seen throughout the whole film. Mm-hmm. And she's being chased by a dragon, and then Merlin jumps on top of the dragon and kills it with his magical Excalibur sword.
Yes.
And then he uses the blood of the dragon to turn some of his side into dragons that he'll then control.
That seems suspect.
So now the dragons, this is when you get your full dragon glory, right? The dragons then have a war in the sky.
Oh.
And it could be really cool. It is, there was a moment where I was like, this is as close as I'm gonna get to this, isn't it? And that part of me felt a little satisfied. I was like, this is good. This is alright. Meanwhile, the humans are fighting down below, which, as we've already discussed, is a disaster. But Merlin says he's going to take down the bad apprentice. And then the bad apprentice, they have a little lightning war. And then this is what I realized at the beginning, Ruth.
What?
The bad apprentice, like, pulls down the collar of his shirt, and he's like, "You're not the only son of a demon!" And you see, like, also has this birthmark thing. And then I realized all the prophecies were actually about him.
Oh.
That
makes sense.
The guy had both of them because the prophecies were right. They were just about the other guy.
Oh, okay.
Which, makes sense. But I just had no idea that that's what they were trying to go for until I retold you the film.
Yep.
Yes, Uther...
Storytelling is hard.
Merlin, exactly, right? I don't want to say it's a bad movie. Anyway.
No, it's
storytelling is hard. So, Merlin summons the sword with basically the force, because the magicians have basically the force to summon things. So he summons the sword, but then the bad apprentice grabs it.
No.
Not being worthy, he grabs it, thinks he's gonna slay Merlin with it, but then gets destroyed himself. Oops. So then all the people who were dragons, those dragons helpfully land, turn back into people.
Okay.
And the Uther defeats the head of the Saxons.
Okay.
And hooray! And yes, then there's just some really awkward, like, knowing glances that go on.
Okay.
I do not know. They are clearly supposed to convey meaning.
Oh no.
But they're just awkward. They're just the most awkward glances.
Between
Merlin, the girl, but also Uther. They're all really excited about this situation. And then they are on top of a hillside, and Merlin raises Uther's hand and goes, "You're king!"
Yeah.
You never see a crowd, but you hear cheering. Okay, and then Merlin goes
I'll
back
be honest,
to the
this
lake.
does sound like your filming choices.
It does! Then Merlin gives back the sword to Vivian, and Vivian's like, "You gonna stay for a little while?" And Merlin's like, "Well, maybe." And then, in the forest, meanwhile, Nimue has the body of the bad apprentice.
What?
And in the final shot of the film, the apprentice's eyes open. The end!
So they thought they were gonna get some sort of sequel?
They wanted more, Ruth. They wanted more!
Oh, dear.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah. That's Merlin and the War of the Dragons.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and his people turn back in because the girl.
So the dragons are actually humans?
Yeah, who drank dragon blood.
That's messed up.
Yeah, and then they're controlled by the person who turned them into dragons.
Yeah. They are bound.
I wonder if that means that Merlin killed a person when he killed that dragon.
Yeah.
Oh. There were some really awkward... I did think about that during the movie, because at one point he's like, yeah, and then they turn back into people when they die. And I was like just happened right there? Did you just kill somebody, Merlin? And at another point, he's supposed to be this, like, good character. He doesn't kill people, apparently. And so there's a point where he's about to kill someone, and he's like, no, and he puts down the sword. Yeah.
Noted.
So, Ruth, would you watch the movie?
No. Absolutely not.
Do you see what I mean by that? Like, a compilation would be so
like
funny.
to see screenshots of, of the dragons.
It is memeable, for sure.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, maybe you should, at Corridor Crew and see what they think.
See what they think about the wildness of it all. Well, alright, folks. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you had a lovely time. Please... whatever platform you're listening to us on, like or subscribe, or
feeds us.
Or
it does not.
It does feed us. This is not our source of income. What's the other thing people can do? They can be like, "This is something I'm interested in." Bloop. Just do that for whatever you're listening on. Just say that you're relatively interested in us. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening. We should finish with a song, right?
Should we?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Dragons!
Yep.
Dragons!
I knew it.
I tried. That's the end.
Bye, everybody!
Thanks so much. Bye!